Hey folks, I'm back after a long break. It's been a few months since I made any content in and around aquariums and about aquariums specifically. And it was high time that I get in here and mix it up a little bit again. It's also coincidentally sort of the anniversary of this 210, and we're gonna kind of take a look at this. I'm gonna take the camera over here in just a second. We're gonna take a look at that and kind of catch up how it's doing. But also I wanted to talk to you about how rescaping this has inspired me to rescape a bunch of my other tanks. I'm going to tell you about all the tanks that I'm going to redo this year and sort of some loose plans that I've got moving forward. I really didn't do much aquascaping at all last year, but what I did do has inspired me to do a lot more and reminded me why occasionally it's good to kind of do the thing that's hard and rescape a tank that you already liked a little bit. There's a couple of takes like that I'm just kind of refused. It's like, let's see how many years they can go, kind of Thelma and Louising right off the cliff of healthy plant growth and stuff. So we're going to explore that a little bit this week. Please stick around. And I wanted to tell you early, be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video, if you like that I'm making videos like this. Hit like. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. Hopefully I'll earn your subscription today, and I'd love to see you again. Okay, so let's take a look at this tank and kind of see how it's doing since the rescape. Introducing tiny fish to this tank has made it so much more interesting. I think I'm providing a lot more nutrients for the plants too, with all the added bodies in here. I'm actually feeling like I'm treading close to overpopulated in this tank, which is kind of funny. I always figured Mr. Tubes would be the great equalizer in the overpopulation problem. I'm quite sure he's not going to pop his head out, but I'll throw some food in here and we'll see if he comes out for that. I got a little tiny sprig of this plant at like a fish swap. Having trouble remembering the name of it because I got the camera running. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of this before, but anyway, it grew like crazy in the sump. And I've actually pulled it out because it was blocking the light. So I pulled it out of the sump and I put it up here. I'm just keeping this to the next fish swap so I can give it back to the other club participants. The other thing I'd kind of like to do is leave a batch like this in the tank. And then as soon as it gets warm again, I might take some of this out, throw it into the pond, and see if I get some more of these little fish. Because I'm willing to bet they're breeding like crazy in those things. Probably a lot of eggs in there. Got this angels growing up and looking really, really nice. Lots of other pretty fish. These giant danios are doing great and really have a lot of really nice color. They're not going to stand still and let me photograph them for you, but. So this entire plant is coming out of the back of this tank. It's been going for a while. That's kind of pre-existed even with the old setup. I've just kind of kept it going. You see it's migrated over to this window. This is, it was going into the floor, so I kind of wrapped it around this terrarium and stuff. And over to here, over to this window. Again, I had to pull this up because it was just kind of laying on the floor right here. Yeah, all the way over there. Some of this is coming out of the back of this tank. It's got these enormous leaves, like if you need some scale. That leaf is about as big as my hand. Really, really interesting. And probably helping out the tanks as well. This tank also, with that plant in there, is doing super, super good with the bio orb. And then the big guy. Okay, so hopefully you caught it last year, but I also redid the sump. And I sort of made this into a little secret planted garden in here. And it's doing really good. It's got a lot of really healthy looking cherry shrimp that are kind of hard to capture individually. And I think I see some babies in here. I actually tried to put some not blue-eyed rainbows, but just blue eyes, daisy rice fish, blue-eyed daisy rice fish in here. And they did not produce any offspring that I can tell. But I might have to try that again. There's no heater or anything, but it does get some heat probably from the a little bit of water that's trickling in. There's just a very small amount of water that's kind of trickling in here, and then it overflows back over here. This will become important later when we're talking about how I've got some mystery baby fish in here that I've pulled out both before and currently. Every now and then I'll look in here and I'll see another little baby fish that appears to be from the top tank, and I'm not sure how they're making their way in here. That's a quick update on the sump. I feed this tank with these one of these little pill a day kind of things, and I put a variety of food in there. So in one of these daily feedings, we got some bug bites. We've got some of that extreme pellet food that Mr. Tubes likes a lot. Sometimes a little bit of flake food in there. I've got one of those, like a half a brick of one of those aquarium co-op tube effects worm things in there. And sometimes I'll do the blood worms and the tube effects worms and the brine shrimp and something like that. So a block of like natural dry food. Oh gosh, freeze-dried food. All right, I think I'll stop now before I pour it all into the floor. I'm using this as sort of my motivation to move forward this year. So a lot of my tanks, and I talked a little bit about complacency and getting used to what you're used to. You know, you see your tank and it kind of grows slowly. And in fact, I remember at times thinking how happy I was that the plants really started to slow down and not grow so much, so there wasn't so much trimming and stuff to do. But inevitably that just leads to a tank that kind of just starts to languish after a while and not be as stunning as it could be, because a lot of times the nutrients in a tank will get eaten up. Now, it's true that many times some tanks, depending on how you build them, are going to last years and years and years. So this tank, initially, it just wasn't growing things. I spent a lot on the lights, and I tried to buy lights that would be really highly effective. And I felt like they should have been, because other versions of those lights seem to work on all my other tanks. And any other tank I put them on, they seem to do really well. So I felt like the Kessels should have worked. And so maybe it was other things. The substrate that I put in the last tank was mostly sand, which doesn't really offer much. I did put what I felt like was a lot of fluorite, but maybe not enough fluorite into the tank last time. Those clay-based substrates really help to absorb nutrients and kind of lock them in, and the plants come in and tap into those things like batteries and recharge to get their nutrients and stuff. So probably more fluorite my first time through this tank would have helped a lot. So I completely redid this tank, which was something I literally put that project off for years. I'd seen it kind of languishing and languishing. The other thing that I did with this latest version of the tank is I added small fish. As you can see, the activity is just tremendous. Now, I used to have some fairly decent size basmati rainbows in here that were gorgeous fish, Holly's favorite fish by far. I had a bunch of those, and they would even make babies, and then I was raising those up in the sump and bringing them around and stuff. They passed away the last bits of those passed away this year, kind of soon after I did this. In fact, I had another fish pass away that didn't make it through the process. I had something going on with my quarantine tank, and that was responsible for at least one death that I had. I think I underestimated the amount of waste produced by all the large fish that I had, especially Mr. Tubes. I was able to move them all over to the tank a little bit faster than I had intended to, but I got them back over here, and after that, they were fine. I was worried that all the work that I'd done in this period with the sump not running would really mess with this tank and make it hard to cycle, or make it crash really bad, so I'd have to recycle it. But it didn't. It seemed to just kind of really take off. In fact, I never really saw a huge spike in ammonia or anything. It was pretty much good to go right from the start, and that was great. And that's why I put off working on the sump until much later. When I eventually did do the sump, it also has been an amazing thing. Like I'm growing plants in there. It's a neat little project kind of underneath, and something really odd happened. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it a little bit. So of the small fish in this tank, I've got a couple of different species. One is these little red-eye fellows, And also I've got these rosy barbs. Rosy barbs are like super tough. They eat algae and any other kind of soft plant, really, and they and they graze a lot, and they kind of keep that hair algae down. One problem I was having before with this tank was I had hair algae problems, and I was starting to get that black beard algae problems. The Siamese algae eaters love black beard algae, and so I've got a number of mature ones of those, and I have 0 black beard algae. Also in this tank I've got 0 hair algae, so it's in those ways it's algae free. I still get a lot of algae on the glass, which I have to clean. In fact, I just cleaned this yesterday, but some of that is just this room. It's got some direct sunlight and stuff, and it gets really bright in here. It kind of breaks a lot of rules for aquariums. I keep the shades mostly covered and stuff, but it does get a lot of light from this side of the room and then that side of the room, just depending on what time of day it is. So if you were watching when I did the sump video, I found these mystery fish, and I'm like, what are they? Well, it turns out they're red eye. There's the red eyes, and there's these rosy barbs. Somehow I've got babies down in my sump. Now I haven't taken any plants out of here, like since I added those fish and then put them down there. That's normally how I get fish that kind of jump from one tank to another tank. So how did they end up in my sump? Like if it wasn't a plant transfer or something like that, I've never had those fish in there before. So either eggs or fish, and the fish part, that's a little bit more understandable than like an egg or something. But the fish I found were itty bitty tiny. It's like they were born in there. So I guess they could have made their way through the overflow, past the sock filter, past the biological filtration in the little trays and stuff, that sintered glass and ceramic stuff all the way through there, then up over the overflow, and then somehow either made it into the little teeny tiny pump that pumps water into the sump, or maybe in the overflow part of the sump when it was really full. Sometimes when I first fill it up after a water change, I'll have it all the way up to that point, and things could theoretically swim around back and forth through there. Seems unlikely. Yeah, it got sucked into this little teeny tiny pump, and especially that many times. I mean, I've got to date I've found about 5 of the rosy barbs and 2 of the red eyes. They've actually been living in my Spec 16 and kind of growing them out, and I guess I was just going to throw them back in here. I'll have to watch and see if I get a lot of babies. I have seen a baby. I did have a baby kind of grow up and mature inside of here with another rosy barb. I have a feeling that I'm going to be giving away a bunch of rosy barbs at one of my club meetings soon. But this tank has been so much better and so much more enjoyable than it was before. It's grown in really well. I don't have any algae problems. I love the extra activity with all the other fish. Pretty sure Mr. Tooze has gotten a free meal or two out of some of those fish, but overall they don't look like they're like running for their life or anything all the time. And I never see the stressful chase or something like that. So hopefully he takes them in a very quick and humane way in the middle of the night. Most of these fish he just can't catch. And it's been this busy for a long time. I haven't felt the need to really add any fish, especially with them popping up and showing up in the sump. But rescaping this worked out so well, it's really inspired me to kind of revisit a lot of my older scapes. Now, I think one of my next targets for sure this year is going to be the Spec 16. Spec 16 I set up with all this ADA stuff, and it did okay. It did okay for a long time, but it really needs to be redone. Like the plants seem to be, some of the plants seem to be all right, and it's got a really nice little crypt parv garden, but it's sort of overrun with hair algae. And the only reason I've kind of kept the tank going actually is because it's got a lot of cherry shrimp in there. I really love the cherry shrimp, and I try to have at least one tank where they kind of reign supreme. Right now they're going in the sump, but who knows what fish I might want to breed in there that'll eat them. So I try not to depend on the sump shrimp too much, but that's my cherry shrimp bastion, so I'll need to find maybe another safe place to put them. I think this was my only aquascape last year too, unless we count the sump, which is all part of one system like I was saying. But that's kind of crazy, isn't it? That's the first year I've ever only done one tank in a long time. I mean, since since probably before I started keeping aquariums. That's the least amount that I've done. I'm going to change that up a bit this year. I've been real complacent with a bunch of tanks. There's a bunch of stuff that I should have just changed out a long time ago. I've got a few tanks that I still like them mechanically. Like the glass is still good. The filter mechanism or light or whatever, that's all fine. But really it needs to just be redone. It needs to be reset. So one tank that I'm not rescaping because it won't grow plants anymore. Of course, the plants aren't looking so great anymore. But because it won't stop growing, one particular plant that has just absolutely taken over everything. This is something that Dustin sells as baby tears. I originally found the other scientific name for it, the real scientific name for it. I'll have to look. And then there's, it's also known, I think it's pearlweed is the other thing that people call it. The more common thing that people call it. That actually came in with some shrimp. If you remember initially with that tank, I was going to add some shrimp in and make it sort of a shrimp tank. It came in with some shrimp. I kind of popped it in there to kind of let it grow, and now it's the entire tank. It is taken over the entire tank. I've done a couple of trims where I pulled it back, cut it back and stuff, but I always end up with the same thing, which is just this tank full of plants. So I think I'm going to do the old remove everything with that tank. I don't know if I'll do the substrate and everything too. I might see if I can keep it. I think it'd be interesting to maybe take off an inch of that and then put in some fresh sand just to kind of make it a little bit cleaner. Even if I go up a ½ inch on the already pretty deep substrate, I think that would be okay. Because I think that substrate's still got a lot of life in it, and I hate to just kind of pull it out. But I want to pull everything out of that tank. I want to just remove that plant from all the things, all the substrate, all the log and everything else. Get it out of there. And then re-add stuff back in. Maybe stuff that was kind of covered up by that, or new stuff that I find. Might be time to put some new plants in. Of course, I'm going to have to pull those fish out, I think, at least initially. Maybe I'll leave one tough fish in there or something like that, but I'll have to pull those fish out. And that's not something I'm looking forward to. Dirty tanks are dirty work. And it usually makes a mess, and it's carpeted in there. It's my bedroom. So wish me luck. Another tank I want to change out this year is that anoxic 20 gallon. I didn't put near enough substrate in that. I think an under gravel filter in a low profile tank like the 20 long is probably a little difficult. I think that would work much better, maybe like a 20 high, so you can have that little extra height so you can add more substrate. I think I just don't have enough substrate in there. I've added CO2 in. I've discontinued using CO2. It's like I've kind of gone back and forth a bunch of different things. But all I seem to be really growing well in there is algae right now. So I think that system needs to be reconsidered and rethought. What I'd really like to do is add a paludarium top to that. So take all the same principles that I'm using now, including the under gravel filter and stuff like that, but run it up through something else, like a little mountaintop kind of like trickle down waterfall kind of thing, with plants growing off of it and stuff like that, and add another dimension to that tank, make it taller. So I'm not completely sure what I'm going to do with that tank, but it'll probably go down at least briefly while I reconsider what I want to do in there. I'm also going to set up a brand new tank from scratch. It's been a while since I've done that. It's been kind of a long while. I think the last one was maybe that custom tiny island tank or something. I think was the last one that I built from scratch. This is a sort of a kit tank. It's a larger kit tank, and well, I'll tell you more about it when it comes in. But hopefully it'll be a nice show tank to add to my room upstairs. It is like a 40 gallon. I think it was like a 40 gallon tank. So look forward to seeing that soon, hopefully. I actually just got a product from Fluval to talk about in the mail the other day, and it is their new CO2 system. I'll be kind of I'm examining it right now. I've read all the instructions. You're welcome. I know. It's a brave new world. It's really similar to maybe some other devices that I've seen before, but I haven't actually used. I've used homemade. It's a mix between homemade CO2 and kind of a factory produced homemade CO2 system. But we'll take a look at that real soon. Until next time, follow your bliss. Keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.